1. Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Film School for this Wednesday, the 2nd of September 2020. My name's Adam, and today I'm rounded out by a fantastic group of hosts, including the one and only Josh J. Luke. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing well, thanks, Adam. How are you?
Yeah, doing pretty well, thanks, for just another Wednesday in lockdown.
Yep, that's
We
exactly
also
what it
have
is.
the final girl and film movie maiden, scary movie maiden, Emily Pratt. How you doing, Emily?
Hey Adam, I'm pretty well, thanks.
Excellent. And then last but not least, we have the rom-com expert, Kris Birchie. How you doing, Kris?
Hey Adam, things are good. Hello everyone.
Fantastic. So, if you don't know what Film School Podcast is, it is a podcast where a group of friends sit around and talk about the movies that we've watched throughout the week. And then we also talk about the movie of the week, which we nominate each and every Wednesday. This week is Call Me By Your Name. And we'll tell you what next week's is shortly. You can follow us on Letterboxd. We have a YouTube channel. You can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or podcast services. So, let's jump into it. What do you guys watch this week?
So I watched a couple of Sidney Lumet films over the weekend, the legendary director of films such as 12 Angry Men and Network. I started off with Murder on the Orient Express on Saturday night, and it has an all-star cast. It's got Sean Connery, it's got Lauren Bacall, it's got Ingrid Bergman, a lot of old-school 70s Hollywood giants. But I found the first 30 to 45 minutes a little slow. However, it did even out in the end, and I sort of ended up enjoying it. But the next night, I decided to put on his 1975 effort, his follow-up to that, Dog Day Afternoon. Now, Dog Day Afternoon is a biographical neo-noir crime drama that tells the story of an attempted bank robbery committed by one Sonny Wartzik, portrayed by Al Pacino here. While it's supposed to be a quick in and out bank robbery, turns into an extended hostage situation that becomes the focus of a media frenzy. The film explores Sonny's relationship with the hostages in the bank and also his motives for committing the crime. One thing that I found very interesting and very stark about this film is that it has no musical score at all, except for 3 diegetic songs, meaning that they were played within the film and can be heard by the characters. It was nominated for 6 Oscars and won the Best Original Screenplay. I have a very strong feeling that this was one of those films that only lost out at the Oscars because of the competition it was up against. This was the same year as One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And that was the only way I could see Al Pacino not winning Best Actor here. He's electric in this movie. You can't take your eyes off him. And I found it interesting that, especially watching this movie, we sort of have this idea of old Al Pacino. And when you think of Al Pacino, you think of one very specific thing. But when you watch movies from the 70s with him in, seeing his range is just really amazing. And this is honestly maybe the best I've ever seen him. So I gave this one 5 stars.
Sounds good, Josh. I agree too with that sort of thing. With Robert De Niro is kind of another character that if you've only seen him in newer movies, you wouldn't kind of get his old movie vibe as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I guess it was almost all the Godfather cast sort of have these very wide ranges that if you don't go back and explore, you don't really find them.
Yeah.
Cool. Movie I watched Fight Club, and I'd like to start off by acknowledging straight up that I'm breaking both the first and second rule of Fight Club right now, but hopefully I'll be forgiven for this discretion. If not, it's a movie worth talking about anyway. So yeah, came out in 1999 and was directed by David Fincher. Stars Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, and Helena Bonham Carter. I said that right, didn't I?
Yeah, Helena Bonham Carter. And yeah, it follows a unnamed protagonist played by Edward Norton and his developing friendship with a man named Tyler Durden, who he meets on a plane. Edward Norton's character has struggled with sleep, and he finds that going to therapy groups like ones for late-stage cancer and diseases of that nature, help him sleep, getting the emotional discharge of the crying and everything, and seeing everyone else go through pain. It's quite a weird thing. And he also starts a relationship with another one of these sort of therapy jumpers played by Helena Bonham Carter. And the film explores his growing friendship and sort of escape from the typical some crazy consequences, I think, is the best way to describe it.
Yeah, it was pretty.
And unfortunately, Em isn't here right now to talk about the film, but this was probably one of my favorite films of all time from when I was 15 to when I was about 20. Still love it. Still think it's almost a perfect movie. I potentially love it for different reasons now than I used to back then. I think different characters sort of come to the forefront these days, especially Helena Bonham Carter's character, who can sometimes come across as the crazy one in the film, but really she may be the most sane.
Yeah, and the most grounded. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt just looks phenomenal in this film.
Oh, I cannot.
God,
Yeah,
I know
his
that,
body is
frothing over Brad Pitt, but I have no shame. Him and Zac
Efron. Absolutely, especially in this one. This is Brad Pitt's. It's probably my favorite Brad Pitt role. It might not be his best, but it's one of his most iconic. But I like this for the fact that I probably like it, as I said, for different reasons than I did when I was a teenager. When you're a teenager, all the masculine energy of this film really comes across and really relates. And then when you get a bit older, you realise that it's actually critiquing that and they're showing the dangers of that sort of one-way thinking.
Em, did you want to make some comments?
I don't know when I dropped out, so I don't know.
So
we've
just filled in on the plot.
Okay.
So yeah, what were your thoughts on the movie? How did you like it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was well paced. I thought the twist was done quite well. I think it's kind of silly on Amazon Prime. It kind of gives it away in a little synopsis. So I knew it was coming. But yeah, just the way it kind of was uncovered was quite good.
So this was your first viewing?
Well, I'd seen it as a kid, but I only remembered the fact that there is a fight club. So it pretty much was my first viewing.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was quite interesting. I was reading that it actually got heaps of mixed reviews and that the studio executives didn't even like the movie. And that, when it first came out at box office, it returned $100 million after having a $64 million budget. And that it was seen as one of the most controversial movies of 1999. Yeah.
Probably for the wrong reasons too.
Yeah. Yeah, which surprised me because I was like, oh, I didn't really see anything controversial about it, but maybe that's just me. So yeah, I don't know. I really found it enjoyable and entertaining, but then I also liked the fact that it did have that deeper critique of masculinity, but also capitalism and all that sort of stuff too. So yeah.
I have to think that there's a lot of people who have this as their favorite movie who just do not know what this movie's about at all.
Who just look at it and are like, yeah, it's giving us permission to fuck all the rules and do what we want. And,
yeah, Fight Club. It's all about fighting and being a man.
Yeah.
Oh, how good. I'll just mention one thing. How good's the scene where he takes the convenience store worker out the back? It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, I loved that actually.
Moving on, Kris, what do we got?
I thought I'd seen Fight Club as well, and I'd remembered it just from that one sort of two rules of Fight Club scene, but I definitely had not seen the movie at all, and I loved it too. The Letterboxd review too was cool because when you click on it, it says you're breaking the first two rules of Fight Club, which I thought was quite amusing.
Awesome.
When you try to put your review in. Yeah, so I watched. First movie I watched was Tucker and Dale versus Evil from 2010. So in this movie, there's two hillbilly mates named Tucker and Dale. They go on a vacation to their run-down or dilapidated mountain cabin where they are mistaken for murderers by a group of college students. The movie is really dumb. The misjudgments are ridiculous. The kill scenes are ludicrous. The acting is terrible in most parts. other than the main female character Alison and probably Dale, you could say. But somehow, out of this movie, the two of them, Alison and Dale, with all the murders going on, there's all this blood, there's all this death, they come together in a romantic type way. So it must be blood and death is a good mood starter in these college student lives. Yeah, it's just that ridiculous that with the kill scenes that even one of the college kids actually jumps into a wood chipper. So wasn't pushed, just a massive clumsy jump and straight into the wood chipper when trying to attack. I think it was Tucker. Yeah, with all this said, it's actually not a bad watch, and it all kind of comes together in the end in a comical sense. So yeah, if you want a bit of a laugh with a bit of horror involved and a lot of deaths, a lot of kill scenes, it's worth a watch. So I gave it a 3.5. Oh, sorry, 3 out of 5.
I think I haven't seen this movie in years, but I think it might be very self-aware too. And from memory, was it saying something about maybe not judging a book by its cover?
Yeah, just because all the misjudgments. There's so many misjudgments of Tucker and Dale, but
Based on what they look like and sort of
yeah,
horror movie tropes and everything like that.
Also that he's carrying like pretty much a pitchfork when he walks up to the group of college kids, which doesn't help.
They probably have never seen a pitchfork in their life apart from
No,
the
I
movies
wouldn't have
either.
thought so. But yeah, it is a bit about the don't judge a book by its cover type thing. But even in reverse, they end up judging the college students as well, rather than just I suppose trying to rationalize things.
Yeah.
Awesome. So this week I watched the pop culture sort of classic and like the godfather of anime, Akira. And I've heard so many good things about this film. And it absolutely lived up to the hype. I was encouraged by Josh to check this out. So essentially the premise of the film is... we're in Neo Tokyo. World War III has ended and we've been pushed into the year 2019. And it follows a bike. There's like a civil war happening between the police and a group of bikers, and I guess just the people themselves. And the explosion that happened in World War III was part of like a set of experiments done with some psychic kids. Also, Josh, if anything, I'm messing up the plot. Just jump in.
No, I think you're doing a good job.
Yeah, so one of these biker gang kids gets into an accident with one of these psychic kids that we don't know is psychic at the time. And they unlock his powers and he starts becoming psychic. And you would think that it would go in a positive direction, but what actually happens is the kid goes fully evil. And it essentially... the events that happened in World War III sort of replay themselves again in this 2009 setting. And there is the savior of all the psychic kids called Akira that ties into it. Is that a good enough plot explanation?
That is as good as you can get it without watching it, I think.
So this is...
it's one of those movies that it's much easier to watch than explain.
Yeah, and it's very Japanese and it's super anime, and you can totally understand its influence over time. It's fantastic. I think that this is easily one of the best animated films I've ever seen. Just especially for like that Evangelion like anime style. It's just phenomenal. Like every scene has so much more detail than anything that you would be probably currently seeing on today's market in like the cartoon film. And I think that we were discussing while we were watching it, Josh, but the best thing about this film is they very deliberately chose for it to be an anime because it was the best type of medium to portray the story. Like, I don't think you could have done this as a live action film. It's so out there and off the wall and bloody and gruesome, but it's so deliberate. And yeah, fantastic film. I can only like recommend that you go and check it out. And if you don't like anime, this is probably one of the few films that I would recommend, just because it is such an interesting story, and the animation, I think, is what sells it more than anything else.
Yeah, this is actually in my top 10 films of all time. I think it's perfect in almost every way. The story may be a little bit too, I wouldn't say confusing, but it takes a lot of attention to sort of grasp it the first time. But I mean, there's no other animated film, or anime film, I should say, that I think will get as big a shout out in a Steven Spielberg movie as this, because the bike featured in this is also featured in Ready Player One as Artemis's bike, and it gets a big shout out in that. So yeah, there's almost nothing I can say about this movie, because it's not a movie that is easy to describe,
No.
and it's just it's a visual treat, and it's definitely made for adults too. Like, I find with a lot of anime and a lot of sort of animated things, their base market is still kids, but they sort of try and write them in a way that they'll have crossover appeal, but not with this one. This one's strictly an adult film. And there's been rumors of a live action adaptation for years, but as I was saying to Adam when we were watching this, there's maybe one man in the world I might trust to do it, and the chances of him doing it are very slim. And it's just not something that needs a live action adaptation either.
Yeah, absolutely not. I think it was perfect for what it is. All right, moving on. Josh, what was the second movie you watched?
Well, a good movie to follow that up with was Lahain, which is translated to The Hate, which is a 1995 French drama directed by Matthew Kassovitz. I think is how you pronounce his name. It follows three young men following a night of rioting, spurred on by a racially fueled beating of a witness in police custody. The three protagonists were friends of the victim. We have Vince, who is determined to kill a police officer if their friend dies. Hubert, who is committed to a better life and had his gym burned down in the rioting. And Saeed, a member of the same race as the victim. The movie follows them through their day and the mounting tension between the lower class and the police. There are some truly disturbing scenes in this movie, and it is so well shot that you really feel the tensions coming to a head. It does a really good job of not making the protagonists out to be quote unquote good people, so to speak, and their actions are a reflection of both their environment and the way they're being treated. It is a movie that challenges you to think about what is right and wrong, and not just sort of go with the traditional path. It is shot in black and white, which is actually a good dichotomy with how not black and white the issues presented are. This movie feels like a stick of dynamite to watch, and it's got a 90-minute fuse. It feels like everything is ticking down to a massive explosion the whole time, and it's quite a feeling. It's also really good to see these issues explored from a European perspective. And again, the fact that this movie is 15 years old and is more relevant today than ever is probably not a good reflection on our society, but it makes this movie way more intense. And yeah,
I don't have anything to comment on that. I had started the movie this evening, and I'll probably add some comments next week.
fair enough.
All right, Emily.
Okay. So last night I watched The Thing with Josh, Kris, and our good friend of the program, Reese, who actually has this movie down as his favorite horror movie of all time. So I was pretty excited to see why that's the case. It's from 1982 and it's a John Carpenter movie, and it falls into the genre of sci-fi horror. And yeah, it's pretty much about this group of American researchers who are posted in Antarctica, where they encounter the Thing, which can best be described as an alien life form which has the ability to imitate other living organisms. So there's that element of horror to it, but what I found even more horrifying than this terrifying creature is the paranoia and conflict that the researchers experience once they learn that the Thing can actually take over their bodies and imitate them. So, yeah, can I just say this movie scarily good in terms of the practical effects that were used. So, like for a movie that's from the early 80s, it's aged super well, I thought. Unlike a lot of other movies from the 80s or 90s, even where the special effects have like kind of ruined it or taken away from it all. But yeah, for a movie that's nearly 40 years old, it still looks quite good. Um, and yeah, I really liked the tension that was created. Like, you weren't just scared of the Thing popping up. You as a viewer was kind of like brought in on the paranoia and suspicion that the characters were experiencing. I really loved like the isolated setting that was used too, being in the middle of Antarctica, where like they've got literally no way of escaping the situation that they found themselves in. And I think the soundtrack really added to that. It was, yeah, kind of like The Shining in a sense of it, like creating a lot more tension and dread. So yeah, that was fun. Quite interesting that even though now it's kind of made a lot of like top horror movie lists and so on, when it was first released, it actually had a lot of negative reviews. So there's actually an article about it like potentially being the most hated film of all time from back in the day. And I think it was also called like instant junk, which I found interesting because like it's definitely not, especially 40 years on. But yeah, I guess that's something else that kind of has in common with The Shining because that wasn't very well received at the time either. Interesting to note though, one of the suggested reasons as to why people hated it is possibly because E.T. came out in the same year. So obviously being another alien movie, it's possible that like people were kind of, yeah, more receptive to the more like optimistic view of aliens being friendly rather than something that like can destroy mankind. So yeah, Josh, I know this is your equal second favorite horror movie.
Yes, it is. I'm actually wearing a directed by John Carpenter t-shirt as we speak. So
Lovely.
I'll jump in with a couple of facts for this one as well. So the biggest influence on John Carpenter's career was Howard Hawks and the idea of... So Howard Hawks was very influential in his use of female characters, which is interesting because we don't see any here. He portrayed strong, powerful, straight-talking females, and John Carpenter used it a lot in his work. I just like mention that because John Carpenter is the biggest jet in filmmaking history. But this movie was based on a novella from the 30s, I believe, which was adapted by Howard Hawks in the 50s. And I can't quite remember what the movie's called, but the fun fact I have is that it is the film playing in Halloween when Laurie is babysitting the kids when they're watching on Halloween night. And
That's
Halloween
cool.
came out 3 years before the thing as well. So obviously had it in the pipeline.
Okay, this is going to shock you guys, but I absolutely love The Thing as well. This is one of the very few horror movies that my parents ever introduced me to. And I saw that you guys all watched it last night and was very jealous. So I jumped in the bandwagon and just finished it, like, again, 20 minutes ago. What I think John Carpenter does so well is that it's obviously there's no CG and it's all practical effects, and they're awesome. Like, you know how
haven't been top till this day. They have not been top till this day.
Last week we talked about how terrible those CG spiders were. That CG head spider, or not CG, that practical effect head spider thing looks great. Does the job. Looks terrifying because of the way it moves. Great movie. Highly recommended if you haven't seen it.
Looks like we're all on board that movie. I was the same with the paranoia that was generated and the practical effects being excellent.
All right, Chris, hit us. The next movie?
Sorry, I was cutting out audio there, so I was going to jump in with one last thing on that one, if you don't mind. I think another thing this movie does really well is it hits every single horror genre and the fear that's presented in it. You've got a sick monster movie in here. You've got a great psychological paranoia horror here. You've got a great claustrophobic horror film here. So well acted. Kurt Russell's one of the greatest leads in horror film history here. And yeah, I just wanted to get a bit more love in on the thing.
I think you forgot to add you've got the horror of how good Kurt Russell's hair is in the movie as well.
Oh, as someone with love for their own hair, I don't think I've ever felt more hair jealousy than Kurt Russell in this one. And how strange
pretty
is it
glorious.
He still doesn't have the best hair in his relationship. Because Goldie Hawn is his significant other.
Yeah, wow. What a power hair couple.
What an attractive couple in the 80s. Jesus.
All right. Well, I watched 50 First Dates as my second movie, which is a 2004 American romantic comedy filmed by Peter Segal. It stars Adam Sandler and Drew Barrymore. The story follows the character's name's Henry, which is Adam Sandler, who is a womanizing marine veterinarian who falls in love with an art teacher named Lucy. After this, he realizes she has anterograde amnesia, or a variation where she can remember things for the time she's awake, but then as soon as she goes to sleep, she'll forget that day. She also remembers everything from the past before her accident that she had, which was a car accident. The movie shows Henry trying to win her over each day, so win over Lucy after they meet once in a diner, and he's frequently unsuccessful. What I really like about it is the chemistry between Drew Barrymore and Adam Sandler is exceptional. The story being sad, heartwarming, and bittersweet all at the same time, in particular the way the film ends. I really enjoyed the balance it gets to between comedy, sadness, and romance. There's a little bit of goofy comedy in there, but it's a very toned down Adam Sandler, which is nice to see. I love the music as well. There's heaps of ukulele tracks in there, which kind of leaves you with and the movie in itself leaves you with those sort of positive vibes about humanity and just feel good vibes, I suppose, but also some bittersweet feelings as well. So, yeah, if you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend watching it. I gave it a 4 out of 5.
I watched this one too, and I'd have to agree. It was like just a really nice, like light sort of movie. I don't know. I'm feeling really conflicted about like my feelings toward Adam Sandler because the movies that I've watched him in, like I think over this year so far, we've had Uncut Gems. Then we've had like the ridiculousness of
Billy Madison.
Billy Madison, yes, which I like detested. Then we've had like Punch Drunk Love, which again was like him at a more like I don't know, more quality acting. And then we've had this one, which and then we've had this movie, 53rd States, where again I actually liked him and I thought he had a good balance of like still being a little bit silly, but actually like doing an okay job. Yeah.
Really endearing.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to end his career with a lot of movies down the bottom end, but then he's definitely going to have that sort of 5 to 10 movies that you go, wow, this guy actually, when he wasn't trying to get heaps of money off Netflix, good act.
Yeah.
Bit Nicolas Cage-ish in that sense, I think.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah, a little
not
bit.
Not even on the same level.
I'd say the comparison would be Jim
I don't know,
Carrey.
mate. I reckon the bottom end of Nicolas Cage can rival
Cage
anyone's bottom end.
Exactly. Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Like Nicolas Cage has like just piles.
What was that?
Nicolas Cage has piles of terrible movies, like piles of them, because he's produced like he's been in 2 movies a year because of that IRS claim that he has against his name. Anyways, I digress.
I forgot about that. Yeah, he just pretty much smashed out heaps of movies to try and
Pay
get
off his tax bill. Yeah, exactly.
I was saying Jim Carrey would be the comparison I reckon you're going for, Josh. He's got some good movies, but then some howlers.
Yeah.
Or a lot of howlers.
Yeah, I suppose. I think Jim Carrey's average is a bit higher than Adam's, though.
Probably of recent, as I said, with he didn't get a Netflix deal or whatever it was.
True.
Okay, so the final movie that I watched this week is one that I just want you guys to watch so bad. It's called Get Juked, and it is a British horror comedy. So essentially, it's like very Edgar Wright, very like Attack of the Block, Shaun of the Dead. So essentially, there's like this bunch of British stoner misfits who get sent out to the Scottish Highlands as punishment, and they have to try and hike across the Highlands as a team bonding experience. And while they're out on the Highlands, there's a person that's chasing them and trying to kill them. So essentially, because these stoner kids are bringing the grade point average down in high school, these people this guy is chasing them down to kill them, and it is friggin' hilarious. There's this bit in the middle of the movie, and like it's super stylized because it's sort of really Edgar Wright. It only came out this week, but there's this one bit where they meet up with these locals in the middle of the Highlands, and the locals are like, eat the rabbit shit, it gets you high, that's why we call it the Highlands. And then it like goes into like one of the coolest depictions of like people doing drugs I've ever seen. Like the way that they've done it, when they've taken eaten the rabbit poo pellet, the people's heads start like exploding and becoming like bobbleheads, and then like there's like this one of the main actors. He calls himself DJ Beetroot, and there's like this like rave song that they do in this barn with all these like farmers that are high off their head, and like it's not like I'm ruining it. Like, it's very straightforward, the storyline. Like, you could probably pick what happens, but the execution's fantastic. And it was just a whole bunch of fun. And I feel like at the moment, I've been watching a lot more movies for fun, or like going for ones that like bring me entertainment. So yeah, Get Duked just came out on Amazon Prime. If you're into British humor, this is for you.
And on a note on movies about fun, you should check out mine and Adam's review of Bill and Ted Face the Music on our new cool film reviews program on all programs now.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So I think that's a pretty good point to jump into our movie of the week. So the movie of the week this week was Call Me By Your Name, a film directed by Lucas Guadagnino, with a budget of only $3.5 million and a box office of $41.9 million. It was outrageously esteemed. Timothy Chalamet got a nomination for an Oscar. It was the 2017. It premiered at the 2017 Sundance Film Festival. It also was winning for the best adapted screenplay. Yeah, what was everyone's? Do you want to jump into a plot first, and then we'll go into what we thought?
Well, the very short plot that I've got here, thanks to our friends at Letterboxd, is in 1980s Italy, a relationship begins between 17-year-old teenager named Elio and a 24-year-old adult man hired as his father's research assistant.
Yeah, that's it. So I actually, I'll just jump in and say I absolutely loved this film. I thought it was fantastic, especially when it came to like cinematography. The way that Guadagnino like really lingered on shots, and highlighted sort of the awkwardness of discovering like his sexuality. I don't know. I just really liked the way it was shot. It was slow but like very deliberate. I don't know. What was everyone else's thoughts?
I really agree with you in terms of cinematography. I thought like
I sort of missed most of that audio. I think my audio is sort of cutting out badly today, so I might stay quiet for a little bit on this one.
Yeah, I thought the visuals were really nice. I felt like the whole thing pretty much had like an Instagram filter over it, where it just like all the colors just looked really beautiful. I felt even just like the setting, like I feel like the little village and like their estate in Italy was just like lovely to look at. As you said, the slow pacing, like usually that would be something that's kind of like a bit boring, whatever, but I feel like it actually just really worked to capture like that lazy sort of summer vibe as well, where like, none of them had to be anywhere, none of them had to really really be doing anything. So I think that was really nice. Loved all the art as well, like the architecture in the house, the art, the music. In terms of aesthetic, got a really big tick from me. But yeah.
So
anyone else?
Yeah, I agree as well. Like, I think the themes of the movie, as you slightly touched on, Adam, were portrayed really well. So, just encompassing those doubts and feelings and confusion associated with adolescence, and I suppose the rite of passage type sort of things that occur in that adolescent period. And the cinematography too. It was really good. The shots were really good, and as Emily was touching on, all the buildings and everything in the town was really nice. There was one scene that I laughed at a little bit, and I got that it was meant to be more artistic, but the scene where they're just riding on their bikes, and the shot on the bridge, which probably goes for like 45 seconds or so, or felt like that, maybe a minute. And I got the artistic part of it, but I also made a comment that I was like, oh, I can see why the movie goes for 2 hours, but that was just a jovial type comment.
Yeah, my only criticism of the film was I felt like it was a little slow at the start of the second act, and that's probably where it lost its star for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, where...
Sorry.
Oh, you go. Sorry.
I just wanted to really quickly add that I think the soundtrack to this movie is outstanding. Sufjan Stevens, like these couple of songs are like on my play once a week list. I just absolutely think that he nailed the soundtrack. Sorry, continue with the plot, Emily, and what your thoughts on the plot were, because we disagreed on a few things.
Yeah, so I don't know. For me, like, I know this is like slightly controversial opinion, but I actually found like the actual plot in itself a little bit problematic, in terms of like the relationship between Elio and Oliver. So, like, I'm not going as far to say that it was like pedophilic or anything like that. I've seen that that term thrown around a little bit in some of the stuff that I've read. I'm definitely not going as far to say that, but I do find that it was a little bit problematic. The age gap, not a big age gap at all when you're discussing two adults, but at the end of the day, I just found that like the relationship was between a boy and a man, and I just didn't enjoy watching it play out. I don't know whether it was probably like the casting that kind of exacerbated this and made it like a bigger issue for me, just because like Armie Hammer looks quite quite a lot older than 24, and then Timothy Chalamet on the other hand looks quite young for his age. But yeah, I don't know. The whole thing just like kind of made me a little bit uncomfortable. I know that for the most part it was Elio. I can't say his name. I don't know. My voice sounds funny. Who pursued Oliver, and that like he was the main kind of like instigator initially. But I don't know. I still feel like Oliver, kind of made that decision to go there, took advantage of that, and that it was kind of quite obvious that like the power dynamic was off.
Yeah. I agreed, and I actually did mention this to you when we were discussing it, Emily, that I found the relationship was kind of felt like it was between a boy. So someone obviously is the confusion of adolescence and trying to develop into a man, I suppose, but it really felt like the power balance was between a boy and an actual man rather than two equals. Yeah, I did find that a little bit unsettling. I got that wasn't the message they were trying to portray, but there definitely was a power imbalance between Elio and Oliver in the movie.
See, that was my interpretation of the whole film, was that Elio was a boy who was maturing to become a man. And I think that that's why like that final shot of his face while he's crying, I think that was like the turning point of him becoming a man.
Yeah, and I think that so the feeling that you felt was partially the point in terms of Elio has this relationship and he feels so strongly about it, and because he's so young, he thinks it's true love and he thinks it's everything and he thinks it's his whole life. And then by the end, we're seeing the heartbreak when he realizes that it's not, and that people move on, and that for Oliver, it wasn't the same thing.
Yeah,
and like that was partially the message behind it. You're not trying to romanticize a relationship. It's more about feeling the heartbreak and the loss of longing and desire.
Yeah, see, I don't know, for me, like, I still do feel like it was romanticized, though. Like, even if, like, we go back to that, the monologue that his dad delivers at the very end, where he's talking to Elio. I don't know why I can't say it.
I loved the speech.
So did I. I absolutely loved it.
See, I don't know. I just like afterwards when I was like processing everything, like I don't know. So he's talking to his kid, right? He's talking about how he like envied the friendship, or that there was more than that they were lucky to have found each other.
Do you want me to read it to you, because I have it right here in front of you?
If you want, yep.
You had a beautiful friendship, maybe more than a friendship, and I envy you. In my place, most parents would hope the whole thing goes away, to pray that their sons land on their feet. But I'm not such a parent. In your place, if there is any pain, nurse it. And if there is a flame, don't snuff it out. Don't be brutal with it. We rip out so much of ourselves to be cured of things faster, that we go bankrupt by the age of 30 and have less to offer each other each time we start with someone new. But to make yourself feel nothing as to not feel anything, what a waste.
I love that line so
Oh,
much.
you
Oh,
kidding me? This scene, like hit me so hard.
And I was almost there, but yeah.
See, the first time I heard that, I was like, yeah, that is a really lovely message. That is very true. But then I thought about it in the context of like the fact that his kid, like that Elia has just gone through this like really kind of like toxic relationship. Well, that's probably, I don't know if that's a stretch to call it that, but like, I don't know, like, I just feel like the overall messaging, yeah, I don't know, I didn't like it. As you've just said, like, he envies the relationship. They're lucky to have found each other. Don't kill the pain and the joy that you felt, that sort of thing. There's like no actual discussion though about if he's feeling taken advantage of. Like he's actually kind of made to feel like, no, like what you've gone through is beautiful. You're really lucky to have gone through all this and to be feeling like shit right now. And I just think that's kind of like dangerous to be putting out there for young people. But I don't know.
Yeah, I don't exactly agree with that.
Mm.
Because especially seeing as last week we sort of championed the idea of the relationship between Mila and Moses in Baby Teeth, where the age gap is the same and she's actually younger. And I feel like that may have romanticized toxic relationships a little bit more than this.
Yes,
And
interesting.
at least with this one, you see the effects of it.
Sorry,
Chris, I thought about that as well in my sort of thinking of this, and the relationship there. The real key point, and I think this is probably from being a teacher as well, is that power balance is the real key point I've got here. The relationship with our movie last week. I've again just forgot the names, but the older boy who was 23 in that movie, there would have been some parts of power he had over the younger girl, but it wasn't the same sort of power that this guy does in terms of the relationship. He was obviously a real troubled person, and the other person was as well. So I'm not sure if you've got stuff to add to that, Emily.
Yeah, I think that like I'm fully aware of how much I sound like I'm contradicting myself because like last week I was like no, like I have no issues, it's a good movie, I like it. But like I don't know, I think like thinking of it on it and reflecting on it, I think the difference for me comes from the context as well. Like the context of Baby Teeth last week, like Mila literally only has like a few months of living left. Her parents weren't okay with like this boy coming into her life, but decided like, hey, considering the circumstances, let's kind of let her do what's going to make her happy for this short time that she has left and like give her a chance to experience a lot, like some love or a bit of like an adult relationship and that sort of stuff. Whereas Ilya kind of has like his whole life ahead of him to like be experiencing all that sort of stuff still. So I don't know.
So I think like I don't know if you took this into the context, but like the film being set in 1983 when it was pretty frowned upon for like homosexuality and stuff like that, is that in taking into perspective? Also, like I guess like my interpretation of Elio and whatever Oliver's relationship, the Elio sort of like was idolizing him, and there seemed to be like a mutual there was like a mutual like respect for one another, especially like in the scenes where like it starts out with Elio saying that he seems like a confident man. Like that's the first line we get when they're together. And then also like all the way through like his like sort of admiration for Oliver and the way in which like he acts. And then Elio sort of mimics the way he acts and they sort of merge and become one. And Oliver, and like the reason I didn't see that sort of power dynamic, I think, is like when Oliver like sits down and like runs him through they go like they're into the music together and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I didn't see it as super predatory because I guess I guess that was my interpretation of it. But I sorry.
Oh, sorry, I missed most of what Em and Kris said, unfortunately, thanks to my terrible audio tonight. But I think that you can't blame Timothée Chalamet for looking young. Like, I feel like if they had cast someone else, you may not have had these issues. But we also need to accept the fact that people do look younger than what they are. And he was 21 or 22 here when this was filmed. And if he was that in character in the film as well, it's hard to see the issues with it. But at the same time, I feel like another message it was trying to send was Elio was really trying to pretend to be straight and not deal with himself. And there's also a chance that if he hadn't have had this relationship, he may have gone on trying to be straight his whole life, like Oliver clearly is in his public life. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I guess on the other hand too, like it's like either could have gone down that path, but then there's also like the question of like how messed up he's going to be from this relationship that he did have.
Well, I can tell you that the director of this film has said in multiple interviews that their plans on being a sequel film. This is actually part of a novel, and the novel has an additional chapter that was not included in the film that is about 40 pages long. I do not know what the contents of that are, but apparently it has a lot to do with his life past this experience. In addition to that, the original script that was written, I suppose, had a narration across the top, but the choice of the director was to remove that and make it so that and that's why he sits and lingers on lots of the shots to
to show his longing and stuff instead.
Yeah, and to sort of like position it so that we as the audience are thinking through how he would feel in that situation. And like there's that scene, and I guess like this is maybe a really good scene on your side of things, Emily, that bit where Timothy Chalamet's lying in the bed and Oliver comes home and is you can tell that Timothy's waiting for Elio's waiting for Oliver to come into the room at nighttime, and then he doesn't do that. All of those scenes were like shot to like sort of make you like question like the relationship that's being had between the two of them, and that's sort of like sitting there and like thinking things through and like overthinking relationships and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool.
Like I didn't hate it. Like I just wish that like maybe they had like
cast it differently.
Either cast it differently or made Oliver's character like 20 or something that wasn't going to feel like you've got such a different dynamic between the two. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe when there's a sequel, I'll completely disregard everything I've just said, and I might rethink everything. But I don't know. That's how I see it at the moment.
Yep. Just to quickly add some more fun facts, the whole film was filmed using a 35mm lens, and that's the only lens that they used for the entire shoot. And that's like the lens that is considered the one that we perceive with our like natural eyes, and that was very deliberate, so that like we don't focus on different things in each scene. It's all focused on like one person and one particular like item or whatever it is. And Armie Hammer narrates the audiobook for this film as well. Oh, also, cool. Sorry, one last thing. The book is set in 1987 at the start or the height of the AIDS epidemic or pandemic, whatever the correct nomenclature is there. However, the director decided to shift it back so that wasn't a big focus of the film, but the next film or story in this is going to be focused around that. So I'd be really keen to see a sequel on this, and would you guys be interested in a sequel to this movie, or do you think it's better as a standalone?
I don't know. Until I've seen the sequel, I think it's hard to say.
I'm happy for there to be a sequel. Like it was, we haven't actually said our reviews on it, but it was actually a really good movie. So like Emily and I have had a few criticism of it, but I thoroughly enjoyed watching the movie. I thought it was as I said, a really good portrayal of the confusion with adolescence. We just had that one point about a bit of a power imbalance or even an emotional imbalance or like an emotional development imbalance between the two characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely see where you guys are coming from. Cool. All right. Well, I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Emily gave it a
3.5, but that could be shifted down or up depending on where my thoughts with this movie change the more I think about it.
I was between a 3.5 and a 4, and I ended up going down to a 3.5.
and
I was between a 4 and a 4.5 and ended up on a 4.
yep. Awesome. Well, look, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up. The movie of the week for next week is Portrait of a Lady on Fire. All right, let's close out the show. Thanks so much for listening. As we've said before, you can listen to this on all podcast services. We are also on YouTube. We have a number of different shows as well, like Let's Get 'Em, where we talk about horror films, and the new film reviews, new cool film review show that just launched last week with Bill and Ted's. In the upcoming week, we'll discuss Mulan and probably what was the name of that film?
I'm thinking of ending things.
I was going to say I'm about to kill myself, but yeah, I'm thinking of ending things. You can follow us on Letterboxd, J. Luke for Josh, Emily Pratt for Emily, Kris Birchie for Kris, and King Frogby for myself. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week on episode 9.